ready to go.
I can read it now.
Good evening and welcome to the April 5th, 2023 Litchfield School Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. Review and revision of the agenda. Do you have anything, Dr. Jetty?
I do not.
The only thing that we were talking about briefly before the meeting is we have the student representative report as E. I thought maybe we could move her up in front of the presentations and recognition, so if those run long, she can scoot out. Any objection?
Did you want to do that effective tonight or with future?
I think we can do it future. Then she can present early, stay as long as she needs to and can, and then can sneak out. Yep. So I would say let's do that because sometimes our presentations can run a bit long. So with that, we'll move into the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes to move to have discussed later in the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move over to summary of non-public actions from March 22nd, 2023. Mr. Cutter motioned to approve the resignations as presented. Ms. Ames seconded the motion. The motion passed 5-0-0. These resignations are Amy Paradise resigned as a CHS special education teacher. Wendy Landelier resigned as CHS reading specialist. Donna Boucher resigned as CHS nurse, and Brittany Milligan resigned as CHS music teacher. Ms. Harrison made the motion to approve the annual renewal list. Ms. McDonald seconded the motion. The motion passed 5-0-0. We will move to our student representative report.
All right. So today I met with Dr. Jetty, Mr. McDonough, and our student council presidents, kind of discussed my role as a student rep. We had a conversation about how my role complies with the law, and that means meaningfully participating at school board meetings. So we decided before each meeting I'm going to review the agenda with the student council presidents and Mr. McDonough to see if there's any agenda items that would benefit from student input. And during my report, I would just share the input from students. And we'd also like my position to be a representation of all three schools. So we talked about me going down to the middle school and elementary student councils to kind of see what's going on in their schools and if they have any questions. And then I'd share those in my report each time. Yeah. And then we have elections coming up in May for the student reps, so there'll be a junior and sophomore we're hoping to get. And once they're elected, I'm going to train them, per se, for the position, and then I'll come to a meeting with them for their first time. And then this Saturday, Dr. Jetty and I are going to the South Central Regional School Board student rep meeting in Goffstown.
And did you get the agenda?
Oh, yes, I did.
I forwarded it. Good.
Yeah.
Any questions for Emma?
No, I love the representation for all the schools.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Good job, Emma.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. And we're going to move on to presentations and recognitions. We have the audit report with Mike Campo from, I'm going to butcher it. Yeah. Oh, perfect.
So I'm Mike Campo. I'm the director in charge of this job. This is the first time that I've come here for a presentation, so I can't tell you the last time that this school district had an audit presentation. So with that being the case, I'll kind of give you an overview of what we're going to do. What we do when you engage us is to come in, review the financial statements, and determine if they can be relied on by outside parties. Essentially, when a bank looks at your financial statements, are the numbers in there safe to rely on in terms of qualifying you for borrowing or anything of that nature? That's what I'm here to talk about tonight. Obviously, there is some concerns with one of the elements of the audit. I'd like to quickly touch upon how we became aware of this. So I believe, and I apologize for the timeline because I don't have it written down. I believe it was in early July or late June that I was contacted by your superintendent and your then BA about concerns about the cash balance. So I came in and sat down with Mr. Totten on On that day, we went through financial statements, we were putting out reports, and the result of that day was that, yes, I agreed without an audit being done, there was reason for concern in terms of the cash balance. So he then took action with the bank, I believe, to let them know that there was concerns there. I think you might have contacted the town as well, so that this was, within the time frame of a week of him identifying concerns, the school district had taken action, including bringing myself in for a preliminary review of it. We then came in to do the audit. That's where Ashley and her team came in. Ashley is the manager, senior manager on the job, who actually ran the field work day in and day out. One of the ways we maintain independence, myself as a partner in charge, I'm not on the site the whole time. I'm completely independent when I get these reports. So something like what your BA had brought to my attention certainly warranted a partner to come down and review. I then brought that information back to Ashley and said, this is what we're dealing with. We then modified our risk assessment accordingly, because now the capital project fund at that point had been identified as a high-risk area. And what does that mean? We change our procedures. So we're digging in a little bit deeper. We want to get a better understanding of what is going on. Part of what we're doing is not to identify who's at fault. I'll be very frank, I'm not going to talk about any individuals here and their performance. That's outside the scope of the audit. What I can say is that through the audit, we were able to verify the concerns of management. And I believe also, a step I'm leaving off is, I know Ms. McDonald, you and another board member, myself, I'm sorry, Christina, Ashley, myself, the superintendent, and the BA all sat down and had a meeting to basically dig into what the results of the audit were. So in terms of a timeline, the district acted very quickly when it was identified and brought us in to be able to give some outside guidance. Again, not an element of management. We basically were relying on our experience in the field. I myself have been doing this for about 19 years. I believe, Ashley, you're about 14, 15 years now? Making you feel a little bit old, right? She was in college when she started with us as an intern, so now she's a senior manager. She's done very well for us. But no, we were able to share some of our experience and provide guidance. One of the first things we did say to the four of you was, it's time to bring your attorney into the fold too. And then that you need to bring this to the attention of the rest of the board. And based on what I saw from the board meetings, it was clear that it was shared, the information was shared with the rest of the board members. So with that, I'm going to have Ashley go through the audit presentation. I will then jump back in when we get to the management letter at the very end of it, and then I would be happy to answer any questions that you have as a board.
So, to start off with, if you have the audit report in front of you, the first thing that we're going to look at is page 1, which
Just
is,
for board awareness,
Yep.
the audit report is linked under Mr. Totten's business and financial operations update.
so looking at page 1, this is the independent auditor's report, which is basically where we express our opinion on the enclosed financials. So you can see in the second paragraph, the opinion on the financial statements was what we call an unmodified opinion, which is basically a clean opinion, as in there were no material misstatements in the financial statements. On page 2 of the opinion letter, I just want to highlight also that there was a change in accounting principle that occurred during fiscal year 2022, and this is related to government auditing or government accounting standards board statement number 87, which just changes the way that you recognize leases. So that had no impact on our opinions, but it is noted in the opinion letter that that change was incorporated. Moving into the actual financial statements, on page 4, that is Exhibit A. So this is what we call the government-wide financial statements. These are sort of your big picture financial statements. So we have Exhibit A and Exhibit B, essentially a statement of net position and then a statement of changes in net position for the whole school district in total. This includes all of your long-term items, so long-term capital assets and then long-term debt as well. You can see that the district ended the year with a total net position of a deficit of $7,150,977.
So if I could interject right there real quick, if there are any newer board members, you see a figure of $7.1 million deficit. That's alarming. That's due to the obligation that the state retirement system pushes on the local governments for their share of unfunded pension and other post-employment benefit liabilities. It's unfortunate, there's nothing you as a board can do to address that. If you were to say, hey, let's go out and get a bond and let's cover our share, technically what happens with those funds is it would be put towards the New Hampshire Retirement's obligation and proportionately split up between all the other members. And keep in mind, your Litchfield, Londonderry is in there, Hudson is in there, the state of New Hampshire university system is in there, the state of New Hampshire is in there. So it's a very big pool. At the end of the day, if you go back and look at some of your schedules in the back, you can see what percentage of that obligation we're talking about. Page 33, you represent less than 1% at 0.34%. So that's how big your liability is with that. So I just wanted to quickly note on that, not knowing how many board members are new to this, that's an alarming number, and that's usually when I do presentations with new board members, they're turning white and thinking they're broke. That's not the case. Unfortunately, in New Hampshire, our pension system is not as well funded as other states. They promised by, what,
2039.
2039.
That's the goal.
I have my doubts, but
Thanks.
get out while you can.
Yeah.
More information on that too. There are notes to the financial statements. Specifically, if you look at, I'm trying to find the number here. Note number 9 details what those long-term liabilities represent. And so if you look at that, you can see that that pension liabilities is a total of $15 million. So that's really what's driving that negative net position. So moving on to page 6, which is Exhibit C-1. So this exhibit and then Exhibit C-3, this is where we break things down in a little bit more detail for you. So these are your fund financial statements. These are presented on a different basis of accounting than the government-wide financial statements that I mentioned earlier. So these are on a modified accrual basis, which is a little bit more short-term focused. So you're not going to see any of those long-term items, no long-term capital assets or debt on these statements. So here you have your general fund, your capital projects fund, and then you have your other governmental funds, which include like your grants fund and your food service and your student activities, which are all detailed at the back of the report. So just looking at this briefly, the balance sheet, the general fund had an ending total fund balance of $982,215. Of that, $285,348 was unassigned, which is the amount that's available to go back to help offset the taxes. Your capital projects fund ended with a restricted fund balance of $4.8 million. This is mostly due to, if you look at Exhibit C3 on page 8, we recorded in the note proceeds from your finance purchase agreement for the project $4.9 million. That's what's mostly driving that fund balance. Moving into more in terms of fund balance, I mentioned the notes obviously are a good place to go if you have questions on anything, but specifically I want to highlight note number 15, which is on page 28. This is our fund balance note. So all those different sort of classifications of fund balance that you see on Exhibit C1 are detailed in this note. So you're wondering what makes up, that committed fund balance in your general fund of $564,000. It's detailed in this note.
Which I think is important, because I think as we look at like having a fund balance of $982,000, $439,000 of that was money in the trust funds and expendable trust funds. So it was money that, is not necessarily for that year, it's for multiple years.
Yep. On the next part of the report, page 37, we're looking at Schedule 1. And this is, again, more detailed. So this is just your general fund that we're looking at here, and this is a budget to actual comparative of the revenues that came in for your general fund last year. So you can see you have a column for your estimated amounts. This is what you plan to get versus your actuals. Here, for example, shows, any variances. Your miscellaneous revenue was a surplus of $171,000, and that was mostly due to impact fees that you got from the town during the year. On Schedule 2, on the next page, similarly, this is your general fund, budget to actual, this is for your expenditures. So the first column is what you encumbered forward from the prior year. Then we have your new appropriations, your actual expenditures, and then what you've encumbered forward into the next year. So for example, here you can see that your special programs line was under expended by $336,000 due to savings in salaries. The next schedule, Schedule 3.
Excuse me, special programs, special ed?
Yes.
Sorry.
Schedule 3, and here we detail sort of how we come down to your ending unassigned fund balance figure, that $285,000 that we talked about on Exhibit C1. So we start with your unassigned fund balance from the beginning of the year. We take away whatever you used to reduce your district assessment, any amounts that were voted from fund balance, incorporate the changes from your revenue surplus, unexpended balance of appropriations, and then account for any changes in other classifications of fund balance. And that comes down to that $285,000 number. And then the final thing I want to point out is at the very back of the report on page 50, because the district expended over $750,000 in federal funding last year, you had what is known as a single audit or a federal compliance audit. So we've detailed all those federal expenditures out on page 50 to get to the total expenditures of federal awards, which was $1.8 million. So that's the very brief overview of a very big report.
Thank you.
Any questions specifically about the report?
On the schedule where you reviewed I know I lost the page, right? But where you just reviewed the retirement system in the negative $7 million.
Yep.
Is there a reason why the retirement system balance of 15 million is not called out separately?
That's what we use the notes for the financial statements for. If you start identifying each of the different items throughout the schedules, you end up with schedules that can't fit on one page. It just becomes a lot longer. So what we do is we break out those liabilities within the footnote disclosures. So if you look at schedule note,
I think it's note 9.
I mean, I guess, so it's page 4 is the page I'm referencing, right?
Correct.
So if you look at doing more than 1 year and under liabilities, it has 22.3 million. I'm assuming 15 million of that's what you're referring to.
so if you go to page 19, you can actually see the full breakout of that liability. What makes that up is the note payable, compensated absences, pension-related liability, and other net, other post-employment benefits.
Got it. That's helpful, thank you.
And then that actually breaks out the change throughout the year on that schedule.
Yeah, where I was going is what else is in the 22 million on top of the 15, in a sense?
Yeah, so that gives you the and then if you go further in there, there's more detail specifically on the debt. And then if you go to note 10 and 11, it's specific to the defined pension plan and then the other post-employment plan.
Okay.
It's really good reading.
I'm an audit guy.
Good, good. You'll love this.
Any other questions?
So one thing I'll share with you, during the conversations with management and the two members of the board at the time, we were made aware that the reports you guys were receiving were not necessarily directly off the system. They were Excel spreadsheets. This is a recommendation I make to any board. You want to see source documentation. If you're going to look at a spreadsheet, you want to make sure that that spreadsheet is supplemented with the source documentation so that you can walk one transaction over to the next. And that, my understanding is that has already been implemented. I think you'd find that the reports you're looking at are a lot more useful when you're working off of, first of all, the most recent information, and in your decision-making process, that's what you want. So I think that Excel spreadsheets and others have a purpose, but they need to be supported.
Welcome change this year, for sure.
Good.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody? Thank you for taking the time to come in and talk to us.
Are we gonna get into the governance letter, or how does that work?
Yep, we certainly can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So starting with the purchase orders, this was a repeat comment from the prior year, where what we had happen was in a sample of 29 disbursements, 12 of them were identified where the purchase orders were created after the fact. The reason why this is important is A, in your purchasing policy, you dictate that it's going to be the reverse, that you will establish a purchase order prior to purchasing anything. And two, it's a budgetary control. So if you're gonna go and spend funds from a certain line, you want to know that, again, going back to the validity of the information you're being given, you want to make sure that that budget's available. And if it's not, are there other areas where that, under state law, you don't necessarily have to stop when you get to, let's say, regular ed salaries. If you go over budget there, that's okay. The state law comes into play if you overspend the entire general fund budget. So that's why that one is important, and that's been a repeat comment from the prior year.
So repeat comment, meaning that it wasn't properly actioned, so you're seeing it again the following year?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll add into that
Sure.
we see that actually quite frequently in school districts. It's not unique necessarily to Litchfield. It's a very difficult thing to get. Doug can probably attest to get everybody who's making purchases sort of on board to doing it first. So it's kind of an ongoing thing that we see a lot.
29 disbursements in 12 instances that were not compliant is pretty high.
Yes, it is.
It is a high number. I'm just saying overall, the idea of people not doing the purchase orders does happen frequently in other districts.
So as you guys see with the manifest, there's several purchases that come out through the P cards, the BMO cards, the credit cards for the district. So in that policy, for the people who sign off on credit cards, it talks about getting the receipts within 2 days after the purchase. That same statement isn't in the purchasing policy of the school board. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there where if, a grounds person is buying gas, they'll get gas, it'll be spent, and then they'll come in and then they'll give the receipt for that gas. So the receipt is given after the purchase type of thing. So, I believe that's where a decent majority of those are coming from as far as that percentage being high at that point.
Need gas?
No, not gas, but
not
just BMO purchase cards type of thing.
Not that I want to limit restrictions within the district and not to take up your time.
No, go right ahead.
We want to make sure we have controls over that too, right? Do we need to look at who has access to P cards and how often they use it?
I thought we did that. We did that recently.
Another option you have too with the gas example is you can have what we call an open purchase order. So at the beginning of the year, you put the budget for, if it's gas purchasing, you put a budget on there. And then they are able to spend that up to the point that they meet it, and then you can revisit it and say, all right, do we need to extend it more? It's also a control factor for you as a board to say, is the amount of the consumption of gas appropriate for the function that's being performed? So that's very common. We see that with utility bills, gas, even internet, heating oil, areas like that where you don't want to, if you've got to get heating oil for the building, you don't want to be waiting for a purchase order to be cleared. So they'll typically, our clients will look at the budget and say, that some will do it for the whole year, others will say, let's do it by a kind of a trimester basis where we'll go in and authorize a purchase order for 1/3 of the budget. And again, heating oil, you probably wouldn't do that in the first trimester. It would be the second one would be higher. But have a mechanism in place where you're not stopping the process that needs to happen, but you're not losing control of it either. Because once the card is swiped, you're obligated to pay for it.
Thank you.
Unanticipated revenues. Any donation or any unanticipated revenue of $5,000 or more should be brought to the board and accepted. And part of the reason for that is that you, under municipal budget law, can increase your budget by that same amount on both sides. So it allows you to stay within budget. So if you get an extra $100,000 you weren't anticipating, a lot of times what happens if you're not accepting that, we can't look at it and say, oh, you can increase the budget here because there's no formal action by the board. The public has entrusted you to make that action, to allow that. If there's no action, that $100,000 additional revenue is subject to your original appropriations. So it opens up additional appropriations for said purpose.
So then it goes into unassigned fund balance at the end of the year?
It would. If you don't take a formal action to accept it, yes. So let's say it was a donation for a playground at one of the schools. Your formal action could be to even restrict or assign that fund balance as well, so it doesn't get you returned to offset. Say you can't get the project done within the year, it at least earmarks that money for that said purpose. But you as a board need to take that action to initiate that. Deficit unrestricted cash position. This was, as I started the meeting, the concerns with the cash position at the end of the year. I don't believe you actually went into a negative position on the bank statement.
We did not.
However, when you reconcile the bank statement, you were overdrawn. So it was thanks to your BA who was able to talk to citizens and possibly vendors as well to get some things held up so that you guys never actually hit a deficit spot. My understanding was Citizens Bank, I believe, correct, or is it TD?
Citizens.
Citizens was going to honor any check that was issued, was based on the discussion that your BA had with them. Certainly not the first time they've seen it, and they were going to make sure the district's obligations were met. Student activity funds, everyone's favorite. Staff reimbursements, I can speak to this personally because I did this, I think, 2 years ago. There is no problem with reimbursing staff for purchases. However, we go back to the purchase order policy. You start to get into a gray area where there are being purchases that are made that you have no discretion over. You just get the bill at the end of the time. You do have P cards in this district. I personally am under the belief that you don't want to see a lot of reimbursements made to staff members. I don't think it looks good. What I typically tell my boards is that if you're uncomfortable talking to WMUR, the union leader, or a public member in a meeting, it's probably something you want to control. So if your comfort level is there, that's fine. For me, I have an obligation, and Ashley has an obligation to at least bring it to your attention. You do with it as you see fit. Next, with timeliness of deposits, that's pretty simple. Regular deposits are necessary. It's as simple as a check can fall between a crack, a check goes missing. If it's cash, the risk of it walking away or disappearing is just too high. So deposits should be made intact, timely.
Did you come across examples where it wasn't timely?
Yes, we did. I don't have them in here, but we can certainly provide that, yes.
And just clarifying, these are related specifically to the student activity funds.
Correct.
We're not talking about, your regular general fund deposits.
Thank you.
Is this all 3 schools?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you the staff reimbursements were most at the high school. That's where they were most prevalent.
That was helpful for me. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Nice.
it.
I don't want to see you anymore.
I'm hoping it's an annual thing.
I will settle for Steve.
I'll say too, so working with Doug this year, obviously being his first year, has been really great. He and Ann obviously were very helpful and instrumental in us being able to put this together in the way
great
that we
team.
did, and they definitely worked very hard to get us everything that we needed. So should be very happy with your.
Thank you,
Thank
Doug.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also got to learn a lot, which was great. So,
The statue for Doug goes up next week.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to report from CHS Principal Jacob Hess. Full name there.
I also
I
like
left
to
it-
start off by saying working with Doug is a great thing. No, just kidding.
You're going to contribute to the statue?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
We were going to have some guests with us tonight from Puffs, but they are busy at work on the production as it is next week, is Tex Week. So they asked me to come and give a quick synopsis on their behalf as we get closer to opening night next week on the 14th and 15th. So Puffs is a original play from 2015 that is a different spin on the Harry Potter world. So it follows, if you know the house is Hufflepuff, it follows a group of Hufflepuff kids that attend at the same time as Harry Potter, but aren't heroes, aren't looking to save the world or anything like that. It's a comedy. It is very funny, and the kids are working very, very hard on that. And I think One of the really neat things also about this production is we've upped our game a little bit with set construction. When you guys, hopefully you'll see it, the set construction is phenomenal. We decided to spend a little money on the set this year so that it can be reused. So they're going to be able to disassemble, repiece it together for future production. So it's a really great investment in our drama production. So again, opening night next week on the 14th. They're doing shows on the 14th and 15th. It's a great, funny play. The kids are busting their behinds on that. So please come see Puffs at the high school next week. It's going to be a good time. My report, is you guys, if you've had a chance to look at it, there's been a ton going on this time of year. I talked about FBLA, their conference, math club, robotics had a fantastic showing. I think they also just went this past weekend, to their other competition. We had the fashion show, a week and a half ago. We had the CHS band concerts, the combined so it has been busy at the high school. I tried to just keep up with all of that here in the board report.
Sports scholars.
Sports scholars happened yesterday, Monday.
Monday.
They took the bus for that. I'm trying to keep up on Facebook as well, pumping out things. Key Club just went to their conference this past weekend as well. So there's a lot going on with co-curriculars right now that has been, it's nice that it's all kind of happened right in the middle of winter sports and spring sports, because it really gives us an opportunity to just shine the light, which has been fantastic. So a lot going on with co-curriculars. I mentioned Puffs already. And then next week, Monday the 10th, is when our spring sports games actually start. They've had some practices and scrimmages. So that's been really good to be able to recognize all that. And at the same time, we've been doing a lot of instructional work at the high school as well. I threw 2 examples on here from different things that are happening in classrooms. Nicole St. Jean, if you ever get a chance to see her classroom, I don't really know why you would have a chance to see her, but she does some really great student choice book clubs, kids working together. They have an anchor text that the whole class reads, and they read separate books and connect everything to it. Just a lot of choice work that's going on in her classroom. It has been fantastic. It's not listed here, but I was walking down the hall and a student ran up. They had a little vial from bio, and they're like, "You see those little white things?" I'm like, "That's my DNA." So they're doing some with Lisa Moore, some great work in there too. So it's just been our focus over the past few months in our PLCs has been on connecting curriculum and competencies. We obviously have had some forums lately talking about competencies, and so at the high school we've been very deliberate the last 2 months connecting our content to our competencies, making sure that our curriculum revolves around competencies so that then we can get our assessments to make sure they're connected to the competencies as well. So that's been a pretty deliberate work. Mary and I have worked a lot behind the scenes. Her and I have met monthly with the CFs, the curriculum facilitators from each department, and then the PLCs happen every week within the departments as well. So just a lot of focused instructional work going on behind the scenes right now, while at the forefront I get to celebrate all the co-curriculars and the athletics and stuff as well. So
Can I ask you if you're working on common, I just lost the word, common assessments? Like, so if Andrew's teaching a class and I'm teaching the same class, they have the same common, they used to have that a long time ago, but I don't know if
when possible, and we don't have many classes where it overlaps, but we are working on making that happen.
But
so
if we're
that,
both teaching literature or whatever.
correct, and
English,
we're really just focusing around if we do a mid-year assessment
Mm-hmm.
and an end-of-the-year assessment, connecting those
That would be
in
great,
those ways.
yeah.
But again, English, social studies, really the only places that we would tend to see a lot of that happening. But
Thank you.
that's work that's been done prior to me, and now I get to revisit it with
Great.
the staff. So that's really it for what I have for the report. I would like to bring up to the board. I'm gonna propose a graduation date that I'm hoping we can vote on tonight. It's been tentative on the calendar as June 9th all year.
Aye.
I would like to propose that as the date, and I will say that with that date, we're closely looking at senior activities. We're staying close to that 175 days and making sure we do that. But June 9th, if we could nail that down, that would be wonderful.
I'll make a motion to approve the graduation date for 2023 as June 9th.
I second.
Is that Friday?
Yes.
Yes, 6 o'clock.
Any
You
other
there?
questions? Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Passes 500. You have a graduation date.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
I just wanted to clarify, because I know people have been asking online. The last day of school is still the 14th, or are we at the 15th?
No, the last day is Thursday, the 15th.
Okay.
So this is part of the question that we've engaged in with seniors, because that's 4 instructional days after graduation.
Right.
They can have one more to get to the 175, and so we're working out what the senior activities will look like in order to finish up on that Friday. And so, I mean,
It's
honestly.
not gonna be book work, it's gonna be probably social, emotional, or something like that.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
we're gonna test
No.
them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I know, you're gonna,
In
yeah.
the chairs, we're testing them.
It's
Yeah.
blue books, come on,
I'd
take
say-
those
Oh my
out.
God, the composition books.
Well, and again, my first year in the district, viewing this process, in the past, I don't never want to be at my last school. So graduation, the last day of school for seniors was a Friday. The following Friday was their graduation date. But we did seat time, so they had met the requirements already. So that last week was just graduation practices and the senior events. Everything was mandatory. They had to attend in order to walk at graduation. But I would love, moving forward, having a conversation with our current juniors and with the district about, if we are days, making sure that we lock that in, and then having a senior week that can really be a celebration. But I know there's other things that we have to look at for days ending when 5 days and that sort of thing. So there's a lot to negotiate, but whatever works, whatever we can make work best for everybody, that would be a good goal.
There are a lot of traditions, like the beach day, which they haven't been doing, movies. The cruise is the big one that they're all looking forward to. Emma,
I got invited to go today. I'm excited for
you
that.
going on the cruise?
Yeah. So,
Have fun on that bus driving that.
drive myself.
Can you clarify, because it's prime time, I mean, it's the first half hour of the school board meeting, how do people get Puffs tickets? They're not being sold online,
Where's the
correct?
plug?
At the door.
Yes, at the door.
It's at the door.
Tickets are at the door.
$5 for students, $10 for adults.
No fancy Wizard of Oz cards and stuff?
No.
And what are the dates again?
It's the 14th and the 15th, next Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
I don't know when the doors open yet, but the show times are 7 p.m. on Friday and 1 p.m. on Saturday.
Just 2 showings?
Just 2 shows.
Great. Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we shall move on to community comment. There's no community here. We will go ahead and close community comment. Correspondence.
Oh, yay.
Sucker. Go ahead.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, let me just find it. Sorry, that came up really fast. So I'm following Heidi's, her correspondence with the dates, and I believe we start on the 24th. I can't remember the date. Oh, I put big stars where we start. Are you ready? 3/20/2020. Mike Jetty responds to Denise McHugh in regards to an email to Mary Woodman. She had the incorrect email. Kelly Kennedy on 3/22. Current curriculum models, grading practices. Her son doesn't have homework, no accountability, and she thinks it's setting kids up for failure. 3/22. Kathleen Follis provided an explanation of the Robotics Club Challenge, highlighted the different teams' involvement in meeting and performing the challenge. 3/23, Amy Anderson fears the rotation of peer group in pre-kindergarten, preschool may affect social and emotional learning. Having the same group of peer friends would be beneficial. 3/23, Rachel Palmer believes peer students would benefit from a 3- and 4-day program to help prepare for kindergarten. 3/23, a 2-day-a-week program will not help her child adjust to full-time kindergarten. 3/27, Andrea DiStefano, concerns about meeting her daughter's safety needs. Reached out to Ms. Fowler several times, hasn't received an email, and she is hearing that there are cuts to the special ed program. 3/26, Jan Sullivan sent us the draft minutes. 3/27, Samantha McClelland inquiring about an alternative diploma option. She sent several emails back and forth with Sam Fowler setting up a meeting time. 328, Sophia, oh, did I put Sam, sorry. Sophia Fowler, receipt of email from Mrs. DeStefano, and will we work with the CH team for a resolution. Also, 328, Mike Jetty, response to Ms. DeStefano regarding paraprofessional shortage, CHS transition services, and extended school year services. 329, Heidi Ames, to the whole board, ideas to shorten meetings. 329, Kristen I could say this, I picture her,
Turker-Corian.
her, acknowledging Heather Morissette and Dennis Barnaby for their job performance as case managers, worried about lack of para support, extended school year concerns, and alternative high school diploma. 329, draft meeting minutes from 3/22/23. 331, Ann Amorati, payroll manifest. 331, Mike Jetty, sending the agenda for the school board meeting. 331, Doug Totten sent us budget transfers. 331, Andrew Cutter, asking for details regarding CRS learning, supplies expense to Daniel Harrison, travel expense from Josh Knight, and a comment on lease payment. 4-3, Peter Plansky, does school board have to approve the change in the pre-K program? 4-3, Peter Plansky, questioning competency and grading on agenda. Andrew Cutter replied with where it is located on the agenda. 4-3, Ann answers Andrew's question, CRS is a grant. Backup paperwork regarding Mr. Knight and Mr. Harrison, also confirmed Bank of America is an installment payment. 4-3, Andrew Cutter, surprised to see an expense check from Puffs Production, wanted clarity on where ticket sale money goes. 4-3, Doug Totten forwarded approved budget for CHS Theater. 4-3, Heidi Ames replied to Peter Plansky's email, adding grading reporting to agenda. 4-3, Tina Harrison, response to Mr. Carter, giving breakdown of what supplies were purchased, rented, etc. for the 2 CHS plays per year. 4-3, Andrew Cutter, thanks Tina. 4-3, Heidi Ames believes the goal of plays is not to be self-funded, but to provide a place for students to learn, collaborate, and build and perform. 4-3, Tara and Bob Keating, concerns about possible removal of the functional skills curriculum. This program is part of educational support of our special education students that they need to be successful in school and life. Sophia Fowler reached out to set up a meeting with the Keatings, also on 4-3. 4-4, Tara Keating will meet with Mrs. Fowler when her husband returns from a trip. 4-5, Andrew Cutter writes to say he will be remote on the 4/19 meeting. 4-5, Andrew Cutter gives us a budget committee update. 4-5, Andrew Cutter, website committee update. Me, Liz McDonald, asking whether I should read the email or just leave summary of minutes for committees. 4-5, Andrew Cutter agreed to add letter to correspondence. Tina Harrison, possible committee reports template on agenda. Mike Jetty, we will discuss this evening. Also on 4-5, Peter Plansky responds to Andrew Cutter as a yes.
That was 5 minutes. Well done.
Thanks.
Take a drink. All right, moving on to general business, superintendent's report.
So I still have communication with the town regarding increasing the sign on McElwain, so I'll keep you posted. Haven't heard back. I've reached out a few times. Grade 8 transition, I know we had conversation. I circled back. There are 8 current 8th graders who are not planning to come to the high school. So just to put a pin in the number.
8?
It is 8. There is one student who is intending to move. There's one student who is going to a private school because a parent works at the private school, and then there are other students who are going to tuition to a private school. So that gets you to 8. That's the number. And
That
we're
has
pretty,
requested transcripts.
and we're confident in that number because in order to go to a private school, you have to go through the process of applying and getting transcripts, et cetera. So that's the number. GMS project and consolidation. I just wanted to pause for a second because at deliberative conversation had come up about whether we should be looking at a consolidation project. And I believe the statement was, consolidating back to 2 campuses. And as you know, the board knows, we've done a ton of work in community outreach over the last couple of years to build a new school on a new piece of property, which we did a ton of work to find and to bring forward to the voters. Before I kick into high gear the planning for that, I just wanted to pause and make sure that the board is comfortable with us proceeding ahead with developing a new elementary school on the land, and doesn't want to pursue any other conversation or considerations about consolidation.
I think the outcry from last year, where it was even raised as a possibility that 8th graders might move up to the high school for a 3-month period,
Or less.
or less than that, really
Huge.
demonstrates how parents feel about 7th and 8th grade moving up and sharing facilities with the high school, even if there was a dedicated wing, because there would need to be a dedicated cafeteria, there'd need to be a dedicated gym, there would need to be a dedicated auditorium. Despite efforts, would be mingling. And so I feel like without that intentionally taking the pulse on the community, we got a whole lot of community feedback regarding how families feel about consolidating. So I feel like we put a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of investment into the option that we did. We had multiple community forums on it.
We have 3, 4?
I think it was 3 community forums where anyone, and then we sent postcards to people in
They
town.
were well
So
attended.
it wasn't just, personally, I feel like we have already crossed this bridge. I know there's some people that think differently, but I'm not sure we're ever gonna change some people's minds. And so, I assume there would be a price tag for even seriously pursuing consolidation. And so, do we really want to spend more money to do that, to rule out an option that we've already spent a lot of money to rule out, is my question and that'd be my thought. I don't know if others have thoughts.
Please.
I think it still has to be something that we consider. You're looking really at $50 million to do a new school, probably more, $60 million to do a new school. And with the enrollment, and I saw some enrollment numbers in here, I think the senior class in 4 years is 90 kids. I don't know the numbers dead on, but I don't know that we would have to build an extra a new auditorium, new cafeteria, based on where the projections are going to be in 3 or 4 years. The school was built for 600. The only issue you might have is like some of the fields, right? The middle school basketball team, 7th and 8th graders would probably have to go back to LMS to play their basketball games, right? Or their baseball games, to use the facilities.
They couldn't share a lunch facility. They'd have to have a separate lunch period, so they would probably be eating lunch at 10:15 or 10:30.
Not if it's 600 kids.
But it's
But
not
they'd have to
600 kids
intermingle.
divided, you know what I mean?
Will be.
It's still 6 grades. So
Right.
it's not, it would be 6 lunches. It wouldn't necessarily be,
Well, how many kids does a cafeteria hold? Why does it have to be 6 separate lunches?
so you would want 7th graders having lunch
No, but
with
I think
seniors?
you could do this, no, I wouldn't. But you could certainly have the 7th and 8th grade eat together, they eat together today.
I don't know how many at the
Don't, actually.
gymnasium
No?
No, they don't.
holds. I mean,
They
the
don't commingle?
cafeteria.
I mean, we did this with the kids in the 4th graders.
We're about 160 right now in the cafeteria, roughly.
Is that the seating at 160?
I think so.
So that's almost 2 full grades.
My biggest concern would just be like classrooms.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we might have to build on,
right.
so, but a $5 or $10 million addition at the high school and a $5 or $10 million addition plus interest at the other schools is a hell of a lot less than 35 million plus interest or 50 or 60 million to house 400 kids.
Thank you for clarifying, because when you say 50 or 60, I didn't know how you were getting there, because,
Yeah, well-
but you're counting the actual
Yeah.
interest
The
payment.
true cost of what it would be.
Got it, yep, thank you
So,
for that clarification.
So I think it may have been discussed, but I think now that we are where we are with what has happened in the past, there is certainly people that I've spoken to and people who have responded to posts that have been on Facebook. There are going to certainly be a vocal group that are against it. There'll be a vocal group that are for it. But I think our responsibility is to do what's best for the district and keeping the taxpayers' pocketbook in mind. So I don't know what it would cost to do a feasibility study. I know there are companies out there that can take and look at the buildings that we have and see if we're using them in the best possible way, maximizing the use of space. I mean, the SAU is in the school, that takes up a certain amount of space. Could we free up classrooms there, and put the
Would we get
SAUs
rid of a principal, a middle school principal?
I wouldn't think so. I think you'd have maybe another assistant principal at the high school that handled 7th and 8th grade.
So I think, I'm asking the question because, to me, it's charting a course for the Facilities Improvement Committee. So we shouldn't try to solve these problems here. We should, and we already have a team. I mean, Kyle can do a building use study. That's not
And how
beyond
much
the
does that
scope.
cost?
I think we would have to ask the board to authorize this to spend about $10,000 out of the, I would spend it out of the reserve fund. We have the money there. And so if you were to authorize us to spend that amount, I think we could answer all these questions, have really detailed processes. We could definitely have, well, further down on my report, I want to know what our next community forum is on May 10th. And so, maybe running some of this by the public, it might be a little tight timeline-wise, but
Oh, I would say write a letter, but I'm doing correspondence now, so I don't know about that.
So I think it's really the direction from the board on whether you want us to double down on figuring out the plan that we had in place, or do you want us to take a pause? This may be a loop trail in hiking. You end up back where you started from, but at least you've gone down the road and had the conversation, so.
I think you're more likely to get a new elementary school if you explore all the options.
So we wouldn't use
In-
LMS? Or we get rid of one of the other schools?
No, if, I think if we don't analyze the data, the likelihood that the new elementary school will fail. Just Peter's opinion.
Yeah, that,
If we explore all the options and we can present, this is what the two options are, consolidation or this, and then people vote not to consolidate or to consolidate, then we
Because-
presented all the information.
we would have to build like at least another huge addition to LMS because kindergarten space needs to be bigger than a 6th grade space. They can't just go from, that would be,
Well,
yeah.
Quick and dirty math. If the community wants to bring 2 grades up to the high school, you automatically can bring 3rd and 4th grade in the existing middle school, right? You take 2 out, you put 2 in.
Right.
Now you're left with a PK K1, 2 question. What are you going to do? Because they would be left at GMS and you have to try to figure that out. Can you add on to LMS? That's an avenue. Could you build an early childhood center somewhere on the LMS campus? That's an avenue. Could you build an early childhood center across the street? That's an avenue.
But I don't want that GMS traffic on McElwain. That road scares me.
Could you
need a
have to do all the pros and cons
Yeah.
of that, right? And how can you solve those issues
Yeah.
if they're solvable?
That's why we do the study.
Could you, so the question of renovating on the existing site was kind of ugly, but it would be different if it was a PK2 facility, maybe, I don't know. So there's all those avenues that you absolutely could say, go back and run all those scenarios through. Do the list of pros, do the list of cons, and then let's settle on where we're headed.
I would want to know if there's another access road with 2 full lanes, that 2 pieces of apparatus could get down the street.
Well, we had asked Kyle, go back
Yeah.
into the feasibility study. We asked about building a road from 3A up to LMS. You were looking at several $1 million and a lot of wetland issues because just beyond the baseball field, it's wet.
I just can't, I haven't been in the GMS line in a while, but I see it, and it's not pretty. And I don't think, I just worry about McElwain. Any other road, I would be fine.
Now, I think you mentioned last week that we have an easement out the backside.
Yeah, but that was always a emergency egress. So that's not, parents come in one way and go out the other because the community is not gonna want, they've allowed, like, a fire truck who's trying to get in can come in that way, but they would not want daily traffic. And it's
And the
a,
other road
I
would,
think it's a private
It goes
road.
it goes out to state, it goes out to Stage Crossing, right?
Right.
so that,
I don't think that's a private road. I think the other one at the end of town, the
Right, but when
fishing
we-
one
But
is.
when we talked about building, when the plan plan went forward from, I think back in 2005, whenever it was, that we were going to build another school up at the LMS site, that would have been, there was a major outcry from that community saying, we do not want traffic coming through for the school.
So they did not want, my understanding
Yeah.
was daily traffic, but
Right.
we have the deed right away for emergency egress, so it would allow us, I mean.
And I think for the amount of traffic that we have at LMS.
Already.
Already, adding
We would
two
need a
more grades
huge
there,
parking
we
lot.
would
But
need-
if
I
I-
think we would need an access road
It's a mess.
from 3A.
We need a parking lot, a paved parking lot.
Right.
We already know that a renovation or an addition of 8 classrooms, as presented from the
Bo.
Bo use case
Yep.
at our last meeting, is about $13 million. 2 grades, 8 classrooms, sounds about right? So you can figure 13 million at Campbell, thereabouts. You can figure 13 million at LMS, thereabouts, plus septic work at both schools to renovate
Site
that.
work, drainage.
Site
No,
work,
it would be
all that,
different.
Parking.
It would be different because you can't build a high school-sized room at an elementary school.
Right. Call it $30 million.
Okay.
Right, for renovations, just rough, very back of the napkin thoughts, right? Call it $30 million for renovations of both schools compared to wherever we're at for a new elementary school.
Right.
I agree with Peter on this one. I think we need to, I'm not saying that I'm for it. I'm saying we need to do our diligence and be able to report on the option, right? And have the facts lined up to the community and saying, here's your numbers, right? If we renovate and have a Campbell that's grades 7 and through 12, and if we have an LMS that's pre-K through 6, here's your cost, right? Compare that to a new building to replace GMS, and here's your cost.
So the feasibility study that we already have done has options 1 through 5, if you remember. I think you're adding options 6 through 10 and costing those out in exactly the same way, so Kyle's already done that work on 1 through 5. We're asking him to go back and take a look and do options 6 through 10. That incorporate, I don't think anybody said anything tonight that we haven't thought of, so we
Yeah.
just have to
Yeah.
articulate it, come back and say, did we miss something? And make sure that before we study it, that we've studied the right things. And then if you want to go down this road, you're asking us to set the agenda for the next facilities improvement committee for the next couple of months, right? It'll take us time to flesh all that out at that level. The principals are involved, Doug and I are involved, 2 board members who's on facilities, I forget, Tina, and,
I think I'm the best.
You're the backup.
okay. So we have 2 board members there, and we flush all this out, we bring Kyle. I would say we should keep Dave Ely engaged, because Dave is our owner rep, he's fully aware of this project also, and I think it's actually proven to be helpful to have 2 architects who balance each other in there.
Could someone else, like if Peter had time, could you go to that meeting?
They're public meetings, so.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
okay,
would
yeah.
absolutely
Oh,
do
good.
the facilities
Yeah.
thing too, sure.
Yep, so they're broadcast, so the community can see us engaged in that work. And then we come out with a report. And I'm saying 2 months because wherever it goes, we have other work to do, depending on what direction we get from the board at that point. So-
I think
feel
we
like
all
it's
speak, I think we all speak for different segments of the population, and quite honestly, now that I understand what they're saying, why would I wanna spend why would I go to a consignment shop and buy a dress for $99 when I can buy a brand new one for $129? I'm always gonna go for the new one. Sorry, well, I'm gonna anyway, but whatever.
But I mean, the real
Yeah.
costs that were presented, not the 50 or 60, but the 35 to 36, which is the numbers we've been using all along,
Right.
right? In comparison to 30.
Yeah.
Well, geez, I mean, what's the better option, right? And that's not for me to decide, that's for the public to decide. But I think we need to have those numbers just to have all the facts straight.
And the other piece of it's the building aid. I mean, we
100%.
already
Yeah.
have, there's a chunk we've applied. If we are going through options 6 through 10, that's a new application for that. We can't use the
100%,
same.
but and that 35 comes
Is it?
down to 25.
So
potentially.
just to clarify that, so I spoke with Amy Clark, and, because I said, I've got myself twisted up a little bit with this question. What exactly did we get building aid for? And she said, you got building aid for solving the problems of GMS. So I said, so if we come in with if there's a completely different option than what we discussed with you back in August when you visited us, there's a completely different option, do we still qualify? And she said, as long as you solve every problem that you set out to solve.
Okay.
So
That's fair.
if we can go back to say, oh, I'm trying to think of any, there were safety issues, life safety. Have you addressed every life safety issue with this solution?
Fire suppression.
Right?
Right.
So as long as you address all of those, you're still in the running, because it's all about fixing the deficiencies of GMS, right? If we're spending $50 million rehabbing that entire building and addressed every issue, don't know how you address some of the proximity to 3A issues, but
I was gonna say the
you know,
traffic issue.
if you
Yeah.
could figure out how to do all of that, you would still qualify for the building aid. So
Okay.
it's not a whole new application, which was a concern, but it's
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
How much money is in the trust account to be able to pay or continue the conversations? I mean, Liz, your question was my next thought as well, right? If we were to move forward with plans for a new GMS, if we're now spending somewhere in the $10,000 range, I guess, for renovations of other schools potentially, right? How are we paying for that?
So Doug's gonna get us a number, and there's the amount that's available now, and then at the end of the year with fund balance, we're gonna deposit more.
Maybe.
We are. I'm being optimistic. We're going to deposit more. So just keep that number in mind, but the current balance,
Has to be an
I'm saying is 79. I'm just gonna say a number off the top of my head.
What was that? I didn't hear it.
I think it's 79. Let's see.
It's, there's what the current balance is. So the current balance is, yeah, 79,000, but of that, we already have 45,572 that we want to use against that. So like, we have Barker Architect, July bill, we've done some filming there, Windy Hill Consulting. So if you, no, I'm sorry, the current balance is 125, and then once you take out the work that has already been done this year, you get to 79,000. So it's 79,000.
Thank you. You panicked me a little bit.
But-
I'm like,
Okay.
So I guess it sounds like the next step would be whether or not we want to authorize the spending of potentially up to $10,000 more to explore these options.
Do we wait for the actual price tag before we make a motion? Can we go back and get an estimate?
I think if you authorize us to spend 10, we can get started, and then if we're capped out at 10, we're gonna make it work for 10. If we can do it for less, you know I will. Doug and will make that happen, so.
Do we want to hear from the public at all on this before we make a decision?
Because we're kind of using 10,000 for 4 additional options. We had the 5 options that started with, and then the 4 additional options that Mike has talked about has been kind of,
Can you just recap what the 5 options were?
the 5 options were do nothing, so renovation and addition at the present GMS site, so adding on there and reno there,
These are the first 5.
first 5. New building on the existing lower site, so no one stays in the current building, brand new building at the lower site. New building on the upper site near LMS, and new building elsewhere in Litchfield. So those were the 5 options that were looked into, that the town were able to kind of go into listening sessions at that time.
And the other 4 options that we're talking about are,
The other 4 that we're talking about is adding on to both CHS and LMS. So LMS becomes pre-K through 6th grade, CHS becomes 7th through 12th grade. Adding on to CHS and building a new smaller building on the upper LMS lot. So CHS becomes 7th through 12th grade. LMS would become 3rd through 6th grade, and a smaller separated building on the LMS site would be pre-K through 2nd. Adding on to CHS and building a new early childhood center on the new land. So CHS again, 7th through 12th grade. LMS would become 3rd through 6th, and the land across the street would become pre-K through 2nd. As well as, so adding on to CHS and renovating a smaller part of GMS. So CHS, again, 7th through 12th. LMS would be 3rd through 6th. And if we only kept pre-K through 2nd down at the GMS site, could we demolish some of the worst construction, the construction that's also closest to the road? And that wouldn't be the 30s building. You can reno the 30s building if that, but the building
The
right
first
off of the
grade wing.
30s building. And redo the GMS in order to fit and in order to accommodate pre-K through second. And again, when you're doing that, you're talking about bathrooms in either each room or kind of combining rooms type of thing. So there would be some work to do on that as well.
I don't think the last three options are viable options, but that's my read.
Wouldn't building even a new small PK to 2 school be much more expensive than a $13 million addition? I mean,
I would
we
think
would be
so.
right back to where we are.
I don't think those last three are actually viable options.
So it's really just whether or not we can somehow move 7th and 8th grade up here and then turn LMS somehow into what we need it to be for PK to 6. Is that what your read is?
That's my read.
Well, that'd be less than 10,000. So,
I would agree with Andrew there. I don't think the other ones are an option to, if we're trying to save money to not build a
Right.
third building.
Plus you have no salvage value on the land if you keep a building there. You know, there's so many other factors that go into that with still operating a school in whatever fashion at the GMS site.
We can sell it.
Can't, not with the school there though.
We could.
I know someone who said they'd
Somebody
buy
might
it.
buy it.
All right, so for sake of moving this conversation along, I do think it's a good conversation, but I want to keep us moving here. Do we want to vote tonight on authorizing some sum of money, and we can talk about what that is? Would we rather wait and price out what it would be just to pursue and look into the feasibility of option 6, I'll call it, but not 7 through 9, and then come back to us, and then at the next meeting, we can authorize, or we can discuss authorizing that feasibility study?
I think we'd want to get going sooner rather than later, and if Doug's
Agreed.
confident we can do it for 10,000 bucks, I think we
I'm cool
would.
with the motion. I'll make a motion to authorize up to $10,000 for the feasibility study of the 6th option presented this evening.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, any further questions? Any comments? Okay, all those,
To be paid from our, what's the account?
Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund.
To be paid from our capital improvement expendable trust fund.
is the second okay with
Yep,
that?
absolutely.
Okay. No other, I mean, I'm disappointed because I feel like we're going back to the drawing board, but if it's what we need to do to check a box to
And-
get
and
more
that's how I
people on
feel.
board.
That's exactly how I feel.
I think we do owe it to everyone involved to make sure that this is the best option. moving
Yes.
Yep, to be able to
So,
answer that concern.
Yep, I do think it's,
That
I do
keeps
think
coming up.
it's going to be a loop trail. I think it's, but I think we need to
Okay,
do due
all right.
diligence.
All those in favor of authorizing $10,000 and the rest of the language Andrew stated, up to $10,000, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500. So authorize up to
Perfect. So
10,000.
Doug and I will get started on engaging with Kyle and David on that. I would just ask this, so we threw out scenarios, I don't even know what we landed on, 6 through 10. If you have some other idea, now is the time to say it. If there's somebody in the public who's listening in, now is the time to engage. It is not to wait until we issue a report
This
and
is
then
what
to
we're
say,
doing, right.
did you consider this, this, and this, right? So we just threw out in the ether these options. If there's something else we're not thinking of, please let us know. We already, looked at each other and said, we're crazy to even say this option out loud, which was to demo a part of the building we just spent $6 million renovating in order to build a 2-story portion of it. And we're like, that's got to come off the table. We can't,
Right.
within 1 year of spending the money, demo it out to do this, right? So there are some things that we just need to say, yeah, that's not a viable option, and we need to plug ahead.
One of the original options that did help hearing those again was building another building building a new GMS up at that site. And I feel like the option that we just added is pretty similar to that. Right? Moving pre-K to 4 up to LMS.
But if you're moving 7 and 8 out, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but you're still adding 4 grade levels.
And
But
there's,
I'm just curious to see if it'll come back with a different answer.
and there's other little nuances, I heard in this discussion, move the SAU out of Campbell, right? So the question is, where are we going?
Right.
Right, so the where are we going, we're stuck in Campbell right now because we haven't answered that question for 22 years. So,
Answer.
where is it?
We have 2 fantastic modular units at GMS that can be repurposed.
They absolutely could.
They're air conditioned?
Heating and air conditioning, right?
That's
We
what they
own 'em.
had-
Like,
Yeah.
We have students in them right now.
Well, but there won't be.
No, but,
Yeah.
and they'll be air conditioned?
And if the answer is to move it into, and actually, we don't need two, we need the one, the 4-pack is more than ample, and it would be fine. Where is it gonna be located? And, so we do have some work to do relative to that, but that's a viable option.
A
I
lot of
keep saying-
districts are in portables, I keep saying trailers, portables.
I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm saying
No,
we already
but-
own them.
I've seen worse.
And there's also been the question about, the 1930s building. And if you properly renovate that and make it ADA compliant, it would be a fine SAU. There's no doubt that we could have our offices in that building, but we have to invest in it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're looking at a
It's a couple $1 million, I bet.
At least.
unknown asbestos tag before you even start, followed
I know
by,
there's asbestos there.
followed by a
We were sucking it in the
ADA
other-
elevator. I mean, that's just gotta be
Yeah.
done. But if the community wants to do something with that building, I mean, it would be a beautiful opportunity to
It would be
renovate, but it
nice.
has to be
Make it-
invested in. It's
Get it
not
on the
cheap.
historical registry.
It is.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Don't we have some,
Plaque up yet, though.
I haven't
Anyway.
seen it.
they're
yeah.
afraid to nail anything into the wall.
The only thing I would ask is a part of the option 6, I know we're gonna move on, but I would anticipate also seeing a reduction in some of the expenses of operating 3 buildings.
Right.
In that 6th proposal.
Absolutely, and the question is, how far do you want to go? Quick math, it's one less principal, it's one less assistant
I'm not
principal.
saying it's a reduction of
It's one
staff.
less nurse, it's one less food service lead, it's one less custodian lead. All of that can absolutely be factored in, and then the question is, how far do you really want to go with that?
I think there's less heating costs.
Yeah, it's more the
lighting,
operations costs
to run
of
the
a
building.
third
It's
building.
certainly less
You're-
than we're spending at GMS right now.
Yeah.
85% of your budget or 80% is personnel. So just, and again, if you were to say, no, we want to do this and keep 3 principals, okay,
You would need to.
but
The reason for
LMS.
the ask and the reason for my motion is not to look at a reduction in force and consolidation. That's not the intention. It's to do the due diligence and it's to understand what are the operating costs we save from a district, not from a people perspective, from actually a functioning building perspective.
Yep.
That can roll into that plan.
But it still would be it would be redundant to have doubles of some
It's
positions.
it's premature to even talk about that.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
so, there will be some cost savings, but we've also achieved those with energy efficiency.
Yeah.
So there are other avenues that come at some of those costs, but remember, those are a fraction of your budget. Personnel is really the main part.
Big
and-
one.
So, anyway, all right, well, it'll all be in what we propose.
Doug, would you send me your list of 6? I just can't write as fast as you talk, so. The 6 through 10. I know we're gonna look really at 6, but I just can't read
The
my
ones
own
that we
writing.
kind of talked about?
It's one
Yeah,
through
just
6.
whenever you have a second, doesn't have to be right now, whatever.
Yeah.
Enrollment update?
Enrollment numbers, any questions for me on the numbers? They're relatively stable.
I'm not able to get in
I
for
don't
some
have
reason.
them.
You can't get in.
No.
Okay, so let me work on that link. I get in fine, so it says it's
Where is it?
anyone with the
Is there a
link
link?
can view. So when you click that enrollment thing, it doesn't,
It says access denied.
Not
You do
have
not have
access.
access. I requested access.
okay, bear with
That
me.
just added?
I don't
I
have
don't even
it.
have that on
The
my.
Is that
enrollment?
C?
GMS project underneath the superintendent's
Oh.
report.
Hang on, I clicked the wrong link. Now let me check here, share.
Student rep, superintendent's report.
It is indeed restricted, I apologize.
I don't
am
have it.
now
I don't even
putting
have the link.
It's under, I don't have the link either. What is it under?
anyone with the
Superintendent's
link.
Superintendent's report.
I
Are
don't
you
have,
on the agenda that was emailed? See, I thought it was supposed to be a live thing, though.
yeah, I don't have it.
I don't have it either.
Okay, so I
I
apologize.
was in the docs.
If you hit refresh, the agenda, it's the same agenda that I shared the link to. It should be anyway.
Can you project it so we can see the numbers?
I certainly can
And
That'll be
try.
that'll
great.
solve the problem for tonight, and then
Then I need the.
we'll figure it out for next time.
Apologies on that.
No worries.
Thank you, Doug.
Mike, we're meeting next week for facilities, right?
Uh,
Stay at 3:30?
so possibly, I'm saying possibly because we need to see if Kyle and Dave are available. I don't want to make an assumption on their
Okay.
schedule yet, but it would
But
be,
so far, it's on the books.
I think it's the normal meeting time, yep. So there it is on the screen for you. I will zoom in so you can actually read it.
Hold on.
In March, Griffin went up by 4 students. You'll notice that it was 3 preschoolers up, 2 kindergartners up, and 1 second grader down. So, again, relatively stable. They're at 442. They opened at 439. The middle school is down 1 in the 8th grade. And the high school is steady as it goes at 413. They opened at 412. They're at 413. So we're at 1208. We opened at 1206. So the other thing I will point out, and I want us to watch this number,
Yep.
at the end of March, we have 70 kindergarten registrations. That's a strong number.
That is a big number.
Considering that you opened with 66 and we're at 68 now. To be at 70 at the end of March is
It's a lot.
a strong number. So we may
What's our
be,
trigger number to add a 5th teacher?
I gotta pull up the
Back.
trigger number, but
2 or something?
it's
It was 18 per class.
836.
Okay.
I thought.
Yeah. So that's one that we're gonna have to
Yeah.
keep an eye on.
Angie?
All right,
Hold on one second. 413 minus. So we're gonna lose
I'm going back in.
potentially from 8th grade moving up with the reduction of about 8 students as we're thinking about, right?
But we usually gain students as well, because they're, for example, that go to St. Francis, they only go up through 8th grade. So we
Okay.
gain additional students and lose students. It's not uncommon.
Without the understanding of a gain, we're gonna be down in 26 students at the high school as of this moment.
Some of that was anticipated, but yeah.
So
No, this is
I'm just
coming
pulling
up.
up the enrollment projection chart that we use. So remember, we do all the projections in-house. We're predicting for next year that there will be 91 students turning into 94 students. So again, historically, we lose some going out to secondary choices, but we also gain students who are in placements that go through K-8 maybe, and they join us. So,
So that means we lose 8 but gain 11.
and the high school is predicted to be at 394 next year is our projection. And we've been pretty close to this. I mean, notice we were projecting 421 last year and we came in at 412. It got a little bit wonky with, honestly, the pandemic just threw the numbers off a little bit, but I think they've stabilized back out now, so
We'll have to watch it.
Thank you.
you are welcome.
And then a donation of a shed, I believe, was the next thing. I gotta go back to my
Yes.
agenda.
Nope, the next
QMS?
Oh,
thing.
community forum, yes.
So just, does the board, so the next community forum on our calendar is on May 10th. Did you have ideas for that? Is there something that,
We had talked about maybe doing one about Power School. It seems a little, I feel like that's more of a beginning of the year topic.
Yeah.
How to read your child's.
Honestly, I really liked the pastry with public safety idea,
Yes.
and if, I mean, I'm not saying
But
we
it was
need to.
during the day.
I know,
I
but I'm
know.
saying, why can't we do one, but have it be at 5:30 at night, and
What
we
is
won't
it?
be-
Subs with the school board?
I don't, yeah, we'll have some, I don't know, I'm just saying to be able to have an open door, come talk to us about whatever you wanna talk to us about, so not necessarily a set topic, but the board's here, we wanna listen, you know, let's have some conversation. I know we get into formalities of having to record and having, you know, quorum there, and so we'd have to consider that, but just being able to have that, I don't know what people's thoughts are on that, but I flipped through and saw that today on Facebook and was like, that's a great idea.
what, I'm sorry, what was that on Facebook?
Pastries with public safety. It was
It's going
today-
on right next door.
Yeah, it was today from 10 to 12. I thought it said 10 to 12 today, that you go in, you sit, and you have no agenda, just talk about whatever's on your mind.
Get to sit in the fire truck.
Yep.
Okay.
It was just kind of a open, you know, sort of like what the principals do when they say, all right, come on down if you, yeah, exactly. So I don't know, but otherwise in terms of ideas, I think the grading and reporting forum was very well received by those that went to it. I think people appreciate having the time and being heard. I just don't know what the next, if we wanted to have an assigned topic, what that would be. And I also worry generally about time of year, because spring sports, it just turns into a nightmare for these types of events in the spring.
My rule of thumb was after daylight savings time, it's hard to get people out, right? Once you change the clocks, it's lighter, but, well, if you have any other ideas, let us know. That's gonna be here before we know it, because, we've got 2 board meetings until then and April vacation wedged in the middle. So I'm fine if we just advertise it as open mic night and let people come and talk. So that's easy to organize, right? It's just show up, have some food, and
Karaoke?
no, I don't mean that kind of open mic. All right, and I don't mean this kind of open mic either,
That
just to be clear, so. Next is donation of a shed, so Kevin Cormier, who works or owns Triple Construction, donated a new shed at GMS for the baseball program. The value of the shed is $1,950, and under your gift policy, the board should accept that gift
Okay.
and acknowledge that we now have a new shed available to our middle school baseball folks.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation of a shed at the GMS baseball field
I'll
in the amount of $1,950.
Now I'll second. Any questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
Yes?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes 500.
We will author a letter of thanks from the board to Mr. Cormier, so
Yep.
I'll make sure that that goes out and copy you on it. 2 more quick things, sorry.
Okay.
Developing the board calendar for next year, I'm assuming you want to stay the course Wednesday evenings, 5:30, first and third. If that's the case, I'll get a calendar in front of you at the next meeting, but I started to work on it, and I'm like, wait a second, we never even talked about this, I just want to make sure.
I think we should stick with the same rhythm, mainly because of conference room availability with the other boards.
Yeah.
Right, we have this kind of time carved out, so I think that rhythm works okay.
Agreed.
Okay. I'm gonna be sensitive to weird months like March that threw us all off. And I'm going to propose, just so you're pre-thinking it, the 1 meeting in July, because it gets kind of haywire, and we'll figure out around vacations what the right Wednesday is to have that, so. But that'll be in front of you next time. Last thing, I want to inform the board, we had an unfortunate case of vandalism at LMS. It appears that somebody with a 4-wheeler decided to rip up the Litchfield. And so some pretty substantial damage there with donuts and so forth. We are making a police report, and
Trail
we,
cams?
sorry?
They have, I know they had talked about trail cams
We
because.
will take appropriate
Good.
surveillance action to make sure that if it continues, but I want to put it out there with the community. If you're the one accessing it, it's probably not somebody from Nashua driving up to our leach field. So I just think the board should know that that has occurred, and our limited grounds crew, who has enough to do, now will have to repair the damage to that leach field and move forward. So, but police report, fish and game, and surveillance will be in place.
That's unfortunate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, business and operations, first meeting of the month. So it is a shorter financial and operations report, but I will turn it over to you, Mr.
Okay,
Taunton.
great, thanks. Yeah, definitely shorter. So in here is a link for the audit, as well as the corrective action plan. So again, these links are open to anybody. It's not restricted by school board or budget committee. Anybody, whether they're in Litchfield or beyond, can follow these links, which I think is important, because we're looking to be transparent as possible so everyone can make informed decisions. So as you heard earlier, some pages on the audit have to do with pensions. So while we collect the money for pensions, we give that then off to the New Hampshire retirement system. So although it's associated with Litchfield, it's really not. So I listed some page numbers that have more of the cleaner reports, where you're looking at kind of your tax dollars coming in and your tax dollars being spent. As we talked about, making sure we move forward in a transparent way, in a way where we're not overspending, that's where the school board financials, which get reported every month, come out. So again, for people who don't know, that came after talking with people from the budget committee, people from the school board, Plodzik and Sanderson, other people in the field, and again, relying heavily on e-finance reports. So not reports that we manipulate, but reports that would be the same reports that the auditors would get at the end of the year as well. So in addition to that, I made another addition to the Fund 30, which is a created report. But as we're watching to make sure revenues and expenses match, especially with the Capital Projects Fund, I added a tab that says revenues to match expenses. And you can see that the work that we've done so far this year with the elementary school, our ask is going to be to take that money out of the Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund to cover that. And then the majority of the work which is done at the middle school has been done by North Branch, which we're using the ESSER 3, which you already used for part of it, as well as the municipal lease money. So if you go down from there, what we don't have revenue to match, which is our projections for the year. So we paid some money to Resilient, but we believe we're going to end paying around $18,757. So we have money that's going out to Resilient, to Introspective Systems, Windy Hill, DDH, and Niebling Consulting. So where we believe we're going to end for the year, for again, where we can't match revenue to expenses, is around $115,000. And we're projecting we're going to use end of year fund balance for that. So these reports, again, they're open to everybody. Some are created reports, some are e-finance reports. And as we hear feedback, we are making them different. We had a request from the Budget Committee to have the reserve and trust funds be more month by month. So we have a new town trustee. So once that email kind of gets settled in there, and the email doesn't keep bouncing back to me, I'll have access to that, and then we can kind of create those reports which show the month to month for that. And there's not a lot of change in those. There's interest that occurs every month. But like anything, I think it is important to kind of show month by month is always good. You can also see that what I do is I take the cash balance from Citizens Bank to show kind of where we are.
So my question back to the board tonight is, with the edit to the document, with the idea that it may, I don't know if it will or it won't, but it may not be added to the Budget Committee bylaws, where do you want to go with this? Right, we've now been talking about it for the better part of 5+ months. I don't want to continue to spin my wheels if this is just dead in the water.
Yeah, I think the spirit of it was to memorialize that agreement, and it appears that agreement doesn't exist, or, we're not willing to move forward with that agreement. So I'm not in favor of approving the policy as written.
I mean, I agree, though, that we really can't be prescriptive to the Budget Committee as an independent agency, right? I do agree with that.
That's fair.
Is your read that we stop talking about handshake agreements then?
It's not a handshake, it's an understanding. We've relabeled a handshake.
Correct, but that's not how it gets, we've relabeled it, but that's not how it gets used.
So how are they considering it? They just saying they won't?
They're saying you're welcome to to return the special education monies that is left over back to the taxpayer, and you can pledge to do so, but we're not pledging not to cut the budget you're putting forward.
Yeah, where's the email from Mr. Sun? I just want to pull up here.
That was like 6 months ago, wasn't it?
I brought it to the Budget Committee
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Well, that was to memorialize an agreement or to have a
Right.
memo of understanding, and then
None
it
of us
kind
were
of,
here when the understanding happened.
Right.
nor can anyone identify who was involved in the handshaking.
Understanding.
Oh, right here, sorry. Yeah, so they proposed, so I'm looking at the edited version that Mr. Sun sent me. So the sentence that specifically says, in return, comma, the Budget Committee would not make motions to reduce the special education accounts. That complete sentence has been stricken.
That was the spirit of.
That was the whole
Yeah.
spirit of the agreement.
For me, though, it's more about, well, the board agreed to return special education for fiscal year '24 if there's underspent. I think the spirit of that's still there.
Right, and that's
A given.
in play
Yeah.
already for 2024. But I think we can make that decision at any time.
During the Budget Committee conversation that, when I watched, there was several mentions of stay in lanes. So people should be staying in their lanes in terms of, we're not telling the Budget Committee what to do, and they're not telling us necessarily what to do, although there is an element of that simply by virtue of them being the budget committee, overseeing the budget. I also feel like there was, the understanding that an acknowledgement that it's bottom line budgeting. I mean, we are free to do as we choose with our bottom line budget. For me, the spirit and the intent of this policy is still my intent going forward. I just don't know that we need to have a written policy to govern it.
Again, going back to the November meeting, and what the board agreed to is why we got to where we are today.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it out there just to move this along. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the policy as written in, with the removal of the sentence from the budget committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Anyone?
Well, just one clarifying point. So we've already approved it for first read. We're changing it. Is this now a first read or a second? Just so I know.
It's a first read now.
To me, it's a second reading, make the decision, are we gonna approve it or not? Right, there's one sentence that's been stricken.
Well, let's see what the vote is, I guess, because I'm not voting for it. So, I mean, I don't know that it's gonna pass. So this may be a moot.
My read in the room is this fails 3-2.
And then it's a moot conversation. So, with that understanding, I'll call the vote. All those.
We do it anyway.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All those.
But if the policy's in place, then we have to do it. You can't all of a sudden say,
Exactly.
move it somewhere else. What we're trying to do is make sure that we behave responsibly too.
Well, it's just that we'll discuss it and vote on it.
Okay.
And we can behave responsibly without necessarily a policy too. But again, all those in favor of approving this policy, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? Policy fails 2-3-0.
Thank you.
But I would like to say thank you for your time in drafting it, Andrew. I know it's been 5 months of this hanging
Back and
over
forth,
there.
back
Yeah,
and
it's a
forth.
lot. I think, the spirit changed. I think we heard from the budget committee that some of the feelings on the budget committee, that their intent changed about this as well when it was first raised. And so,
That's where I was confused.
I still intend to fully honor, this, but I don't know that we need a policy to do so. So that's where I stand on it.
Can I just take a moment to give the board an update? So, special ed resources are strapped, right? So we're working with a cut that was made to the budget, and Devin at the time said, these are real kids in real placements.
Correct.
Okay. We're now looking at, I just had a conversation today, across the 3 schools, there are potentially 5 students facing $100,000 plus out-of-district placements. Okay? Now, if we do that for the remainder of the year, it's not $500,000, it's not $750,000, because it would only be for the rest of the year. But that's the impact on next year's budget that we've already adopted, that is tightly funded, and those placement decisions made today or this month would carry over into that budget. And it's a very real financial dilemma that we're trying to find our way through, and that what we bring into the board as we now have a tight budget that we developed, and by the way, here are some actual things that were unseen. So when we talk about you can't see that coming, we're bellied up to we didn't see it coming.
Can you explain to Mr. Plansky who is outplaced? Why are they
So
outplaced?
if it's determined that we are not able to educate a student with the programs that we have in our buildings, then we have to find an appropriate educational setting for that student. And
And
that.
we're responsible for paying.
And we are
Yes.
absolutely responsible. You have to educate the child. To send a child to an out-of-district placement is about $100,000 tuition annually for the 180 instructional days. And when you add transportation in, and trust me, we do everything we can to, where's a bus going, how do we, we're already paying for the bus once, so we'll just add that in, it won't be an additional expense. But you can't always do that, and sometimes you could be looking at $50,000 in transportation costs, depending on where the school is and what the needs are. That's how I get to the 150. It's a huge number. And right now, we're looking at, as I said, 5 students across the 3 schools. So I don't know how we do that, but we have to do it. And if we cannot educate the children with the programs that we run, then we have to find the program.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Anything to clarify on that? Okay,
Nope, very helpful.
thank you.
All right, and we have in front of us for a second read the wellness policy. Is there a motion or any questions related to it before?
It's a very thorough policy.
I'll make a motion to approve the wellness policy.
Second.
Any further discussion or
I'd like to thank
questions?
Ms. Hirschberg for her commitment and
Absolutely.
dedication to getting that to where it is.
Yep,
And Mrs.
Ms.
Crowley.
Crowley.
Ms. Crowley, yep,
Ms. Crowley as well.
yep, wellness committee. All right, all those in favor of approving the wellness policy for a second reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 500. We updated on home education and rental, so now we move on to the follow-up from the grading and reporting community forum.
So I was so optimistic. Mary said I'm going to come at 7, and I said, if we get there early, I'll call you, but obviously we timed it out perfectly, so thank you for coming back.
Old business by 7:15.
Yeah, that is not gonna happen. You got 3 minutes.
It's all right. It's good. It's good. You guys have seen this. It's been up there the whole time. So as you can see there, I checked the feedback that came from both the forums as well as our meeting here, and we've brought it to various groups over the last couple weeks, and I just wanted to give you guys an update. So one of the things that came out of our discussion with the leadership team is that we really have to get the revised curricula wrapped up. And the thing that has been kind of holding that up is timing. And the reality is we don't have the funds to be paying people after school. We do not have the subs to be able to get subs during the day. It has been a struggle. So social studies was about this close. We had a couple grade levels that were not done. We actually will be finishing those tomorrow. I am at the request of the middle school. I have a half-day sub for 1 grade and another half-day sub for the other. We will be done K through 8. And so it's just doing some final checks on that. That will be to the board by the May meeting. It will be to PERC at the end of the month, and it will be to the board by the May meeting. ELA curriculum is a little bit, we've pushed that back a little bit. But again, GMS is revising the competencies, as are the different grade levels depending on where they're at. Our secondary grade level groups are meeting in PLCs. I've met with the high school about that. And then we are completing the writing and building teams over the course of April and May. Hopefully to be able to be to PERC by May, to be to the board by the 7th.
Can we just level set for a minute? Sorry.
Nope.
In our last board meeting, we had a call to action, right, and to put together, and then you were gonna go off and meet with the team to come up with the plan. I'm assuming this is the product of that.
Mm-hmm.
But what were the initial conversations like? How did we get from that meeting to where we are today?
So out of the admin team meeting, the big thing that came from the building-based admin was we need to have the clearly articulated K-12 curriculum for all of those core subject areas. So we've been trying to do that. We've been doing it in little pockets as we've been able to get coverage or funding, but we've made that a priority. So the only one that has not been started is science. I've met with the high school team. I've met with the middle school team. We are working to get that off and running for the end of this year in their PLC groups so that we can revise it over the summer. We can look at it vertically. That's the biggest time constraint, is having to look at it vertically and making sure that when we look at things from K to 12, there aren't gaps, that we aren't missing things or repeating things over and over. And so that was a big thing with social studies, is when we looked at our K-12 alignment, we were repeating the same content over and over through an entire span of years, that it didn't make sense. So we've gone back and we've really fine-tuned that. So that was the first thing that came out of the admin team meeting, to be able to say, hey, this has to be a priority. We have to look at making sure that we get this articulated, in part because one of the things that has held us up in the past is having teachers that have traditionally done things a certain way and not wanted to make those changes. And now we have a lot of new teachers, so they need that articulation. So we've made that a priority. And then I looked at the other pieces that I brought to the board at the last meeting. And since the last meeting, we have had the district admin team met. I think I have that dated as the day of the meeting, but it was the next day. But since then, we have met with the district admin team as well as the competency-based leadership team to discuss these things. I tried to preemptively discuss them at grading and reporting, so we have a little bit of feedback there. And my goal was to talk about them in those three groups, create a proposal based on that to bring back to the groups in April, and then be able to fine tune it and bring it to the board in either May or June, depending on the time frame. So looking at rolling grades, we have discussed that in both grading and reporting, the district admin team. We touched upon it in the competency-based leadership team. This was the one that I thought would be the easiest, and not for any reason other than the order of our agenda at the competency-based leadership group. We didn't get to it. So I don't have any kind of a draft proposal yet for this one, but the goal is that we will have a draft proposal for our April meetings, and then bring recommendations to the board by June. Again, because they do have to go through PERC, and then they have to go through to the board.
And just on the notion of rolling grades, we've talked about, we kind of have a contract with the students currently. This is how they're being assessed. So
Right.
to change that in this year violates that, right?
We can't.
So we
That-
kind of have to stay the course, come up with a plan for next
Throughout
year.
the rest of this year, and that's the
I
problem.
think we talked about
Anything-
that at the last meeting.
Yeah,
We
anything
didn't
that's
feel like we
power
could-
school related, we cannot change at this point, because it will go back and recalculate everything for the whole year. We've already announced, different positions in the class, and those would all have to be recalculated, and that just isn't fair to the kids. So anything that we have in place right now in power school cannot be changed. So we have to look ahead to next year. And that has been the point of our conversation in these groups.
Mary, I just have a quick question. I jumped ahead a little bit, I'm sorry. These changes that we're discussing in the proposal that I just looked at, I think you said it was by the CBE leadership team.
Right.
So would those items be exclusively for the high school, or would they be considered at the middle school as well?
So that was again, through the course of that three kind of group meeting, this proposal came out of the competency-based leadership team meeting. But it has not gone back through grading and reporting. It hasn't gone back through our district leadership team.
Right, so
I wrote it as a draft because of feedback that I had gotten from the other groups. I think that there's still work to be done on it.
Yeah.
But I think that this is where people are sort of leaning.
Okay.
So
So we don't know yet.
we don't know
It's
yet.
not
No,
finalized.
which is why, again, it's why it's there as a draft document. But I wanted you to see that we are having these conversations. They are tough conversations, but we are having them across the board. And
But I guess my question is, does the competency-based education leadership team, is that made up of high school teachers, or is it?
it is actually made up of district-wide teachers.
That was my question.
In this particular meeting, we did not have our middle school teachers present. we had our elementary teachers as well as our high school teachers.
And is this representative of the LEA as well?
Yep, the LEA president is active in this, as well as the treasurer, the chief negotiator. I don't know all of and the vice chair as well. I believe Stacy. Yeah, so we have most of the LEA board on that team. And I will not, I'm sure it's come up already tonight, but this was a bit of a bone of contention because the LEA leadership team is not on the same page.
It hasn't come up tonight, but interesting.
There was a communication to the board that went through our committee and was represented as our committee, and it was not our committee's, the feedback of our committee. And there were a number of people that came to me after in the meeting after the meeting that were not comfortable bringing it up in front of the leadership, but did bring it up outside of the meeting, that they were not happy that it was representative of the whole group when it was not the whole group's feeling. That is about as political as I can be with that.
Mary, can I ask you to?
Sure.
I haven't learned all the abbreviations yet, so if you
Sure.
can sort of, I don't know what PERC is. I think I asked what PERC was, and nobody up here knew what it was.
I've been here 5 years, and I literally cannot tell you. We actually put it on the.
So just jump ahead, Mary.
I'm like.
I'm gonna
like,
send you an
have to-
acronym thing.
Is there a dictionary, a thesaurus I should have?
It's an acronym.
The procedure review and accountability, we put PERC on there mainly because none of us really know what that means. It predates all of us. And honestly, if we just called it the Litchfield Curriculum Committee, that would be a much better name for it. So I put that under there. Mike and I talked today, and I was like, we just need to rename this because nobody knows what it is. I don't know what PERC actually stands for. I usually make it up.
It's Professional Educator Review Committee.
I was just gonna
That's
say,
PERC.
someone says
However-
parent education.
Right. It's
problem is
been
it's not-
different. I've heard different things. I've seen different things on documents that when I stepped into this position, I'm looking at documents from different members and they say something different.
The conversation was actually, for the love of God, rename it. Clear.
I'm like, I'm going to put it under here because we need to, it's just a necessity. That does not tell anybody what that group does. And really, that's the group that reviews curriculum, resources as they come through for board approval. That's the second, I say the second step because we put them through teacher-based committees first.
And are we going to get the parents involved in this process at some point?
We haven't necessarily had an additional parent member because we've always had a board member on PERC. It's actually a board committee, so
Am I still on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe you are.
Congratulations.
I mean, for the overall thing, not just for PERC, but to be involved in all of these kind of
So
conversations.
most of these steps either will go through PERC or through grading and reporting, which both of them are board committees. So you have Liz on PERC and I believe
Tina's great.
Tina and Liz on grading and reporting. So we don't necessarily put it out there as an open committee because we have board members on it, but I mean, we are always open to feedback, and our notes are public, everything is public, so that if people have concerns or questions, they can bring them either to the board members or to myself.
My question, I guess, would be the timeline for this, so it looks like it would be coming to the board hopefully by June.
Yeah,
for
we
a
have,
lot of
I'm
these.
trying to get everything wrapped up for the changes that were, I say the changes that were requested, but the things that have come up out of
Is
the.
that enough time for planning for Live to Learn? And is that enough time for planning for the next school year? I mean, I don't know if there'd be training on any of this, but.
So there are some things that if you look at the proposal, can you pull that up, Mike?
The proposal, yes, I can.
So
make
for
it
each of
bigger.
the proposals, what I did was I included training that would be needed, as well as practices and procedures. Because most of those are not policy-based, they are just either school-based or district-based practices and procedures. So that is work that we are gonna have to do this summer in order to, or at the start of the next school year, in order to be able to move
How many
forward with
days do
this.
they come before the students come?
3.
3, so there's 3 days of P.
Two.
2. Oh, one's move-in and 2
Yep.
PD. Got it.
Yep. But I will say that we have again, it's a double-edged sword. We have a lot of teachers that come for Live to Learn, and we can get a jump start on this. But I will also say that our funding has been cut this year, and we do not have the money that we typically have to run as an extensive Live to Learn as we normally do.
The money's been cut.
Our grants have been cut. Our grants have been allocated to things that have been we've spent a lot of our allocation on culture and climate work, things of that nature that typically I'm able to earmark a lot more of that money to go to curriculum work in the summer.
And teachers get paid for that. Yeah.
And that is what we're gonna run into this summer. I will be completely honest, we have a very limited pool of funds to be able to pay teachers because we had and again, it's a double-edged sword. We had so many teachers that got involved with the curriculum work last summer that it depleted what I would have expected to be 2 years worth of funding. And we got about a year and a half out of it. So we're gonna be in a tight ship this summer, trying to figure out how to be able to do what we want to do with teachers and be able to pay them to do it.
Okay.
And then my second follow-up would just be in terms of the next question would be Power School updates. I mean, if there's a different way that's gonna be done to this, does that take time or?
That will be all done over the summer as well. So that's part of the reason why any changes to grading formatives, things of that nature, that all has to be decided by the end of June so that Andrea has the summer to be able to update them in Power School.
Now, I
But-
heard also there was like add-on modules that you purchase available for Power School.
We have a lot of them. It depends on what you're looking for.
Liz, I think you made a comment that Hudson has a different module or different add-on service.
They do, but it's a higher cost, I believe.
That's what I'm
What?
asking.
For
So
Power School.
Is there increased
But for what?
cost?
Mine doesn't look like that. It kinda does, but we have other things. They keep saying behind the scenes.
The real question is, when we do Power School updates, are there enhancements and additional costs required to get those enhancements?
So typically, yes. We have, the most recent change this past year was due to, one of the things that was set to be an enhancement and a competency-based enhancement. The tech no longer supported it. Power School didn't support it anymore, so they pulled it back. That is why we had the changes that we had in Power School over the summer and into this year. There's nothing else like that is proposed that I'm aware of at this point. Again, Andrea and I are in conversations almost daily, but as of this point, there isn't any major changes like that I'm aware of. We have a lot of Power School add-ons, so I can't say, I'm not sure what it is exactly that we'd be looking for, but we have, Power School is kind of a giant beast, and we have a lot of the add-ons to be able to do the online registration and the scheduling at the middle school to be able to do like the best that we're looking to possibly bring to the high school for, just different things that they already have on there. But I'm
So the
not
answer
sure.
is maybe.
A lot of software though, that you get like annual updates and patches and all that sort of stuff as part of the,
Most of that, honestly, with Power School makes very little change to what we do on the day-to-day. we had the big change last year with the removal of unified classroom. And actually for the teachers, it made it a lot easier because unified classroom was an overlay, so they had to, click 3 times to get something, and now they only have to click once. So that was, we had gone that route because that was how Power School had sold it, as that's the direction they were going in, and then they backpedaled. And again, that is always
So
difficult.
can we reach
for us.
out to Hudson or some other schools that are doing
I
more
think
of
Andrea
this?
Stern would probably know. She's the woman.
Yeah, she is. I mean,
They all
Andrea is
talk to
our
each
Power
other.
School guru, and she is in contact with
All the
Bedford,
Yeah,
Hudson, I mean, constantly.
Wyndham.
And it's not, I mean, it is a constant, it's what she does. I will be honest, if there is a question about competencies that I cannot answer, Andrea Stern is the person to go to, because she and I work so closely with with Power School. And she's working so closely with other districts as well.
Are there any other questions on action steps for the community forum and competency grading?
No decisions on formatives, and I see that in.
There's been no decisions made, but there have been conversations, and that's why I put that specific proposal in. Again, it's a draft. It's only gone to the competency-based leadership team. We were not all on the same page. The majority of that group said 10%. We had a couple outliers that said 20, so that's why we put the range in there. It needs to go back to grading and reporting. And
So, but all that'll be part of the proposal when.
correct. Yep.
And is that
Again,
part
you
of the
have
proposal per subject? So each subject will have its own?
no.
Because they're being presented separately, as I look at.
No, the curriculums are being presented separately. So
Right,
that's
those
kind of a
3
different-
curriculums at
Right.
the top are being presented because they are actually, they need to be written in the correct format. Currently, when I came on board, we had documents that were about 150 to 200 pages, and that was our curriculum. It's not usable for a teacher. So we've been working, we actually were set pre-pandemic to be able to move. We've already moved math forward. We were set to move social study. We were very close to getting social studies completed, and then the pandemic hit. And the year after that, we just didn't. We stopped work completely on it because we were all in getting kids educated mode.
The curriculum is it's based on the state standards.
Correct.
So it lists the standards, it lists the competencies that are required for each.
The thing that we were missing when I came on board, our curriculum that was written, it was a huge document, and I will tell you, I brought it to my first meeting with the math department, and I said, here's your math curriculum. What do you know about it? And they said, I've never seen that document before. Not for any reason other than it's a 150-page document. Like, it is just too much for, if I'm a first grade teacher and I have to dig through that, that's a lot. So what we've done since, if you look at the math curriculum, is it is done by grade level. It is done in units. It's broken down. And the biggest addition is our previous curriculum had the standards, it had the competencies, and it had the standards in it. What it didn't have was the content. So
What they're actually
right.
learning.
So what is, and I look at social studies, which has been.
Like 3rd grade
That's why
teaches
stuff
American
keeps getting,
history,
7th
7th.
grade is getting the same
Yeah,
stuff.
I
in
was
8th
looking, I looked
They
at,
all
I asked
different
them,
American
I
histories.
asked them when I first came in to look at, okay, put in what your content is that you teach at each grade level. And the content was like, it was the same. And I was like, wait a second, like, our standards aren't the same. How is the content the same? So we've done a lot of work to go back in social studies, honestly, in part because the state has not been able to move forward with standards. That has been a heavy lift. Math and ELA typically are the easiest because the state standards they're progressive, they're by grade level, they're a lot easier to kind of parse out.
There,
What is ELA?
English language arts.
I should have been able to figure that one out.
It is the, honestly, it's the science,
Handwriting.
it's the science and social studies that is the hardest because the standards are all grade span based. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility to say, this is what we're gonna do at this grade level, this is what we're gonna do at this grade level. But we've had to parse a lot of that out with social studies. And it's part of the reason why we haven't even really started with science, because we've had so much turnover in our science teachers. Every time we get to a point where we think we're gonna be able to move forward, we've lost a handful that has, I'm not gonna ask a first-year science teacher to come in and try and do that. So we are working on it now. I've met with the high school team. I will be meeting with the middle school team once I get the middle school social studies done, and that's happening tomorrow. If anybody wants to come and write curriculum, we will be at LMS all day tomorrow writing 5th and 7th grade social studies curriculum.
7th grade. Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thanks for the update. I think, there's a lot of work to be done in committees and,
Mhm.
but I like the timeline and I like having decisions made and progress made by the beginning of next school year. I think
And I will be honest that a lot of that, I have to thank our building-based leadership teams, because we have not been able to do, I'm meeting with 2 teachers, a half day with one tomorrow morning and a half day with one in the afternoon. That has not been something we've been able to do. We just don't have the subs to do it, and they are the ones who said that is a priority. We need to get that done, so let's get it done. So that's what we're doing. At the high school, I've met with the high school leadership team and their in the CFs, and we've said this is what has to happen at each grade, at each subject area. Let's work to get it done. So I do have to thank our building leadership teams for supporting me in that work. And, I realize that it's always, we see it as an excuse very often, but right now I will tell you that we've actually in the last year and little over a year really been able to get some traction from the pandemic. And prior to that, we were backpedaling, which makes it really hard.
Thank you for coming in.
Of course.
Appreciate it. All right.
Any other questions
Anything
for me?
else?
Longest
Mary.
report, longest report of the night.
Nicely done.
Longest drive, it's good, it's perfect.
All right, moving on to
I
job
see how it
descriptions.
is. I will not come back.
Yes, you will.
Thank you, Mary.
Of course I will.
You have some updated job.
Yeah, just a
descriptions
couple.
for us?
So school psychologists. So we're bringing forward to you this update. You can see in red and the strikeout. I mean, we're using the track changes sort of model to bring it forward to you. But we're updating this and refreshing it. You'll notice that it was last updated on July 6th of 2005, so it was ready for that.
Update.
The other piece is that we now have, and just a reminder to the board, at the point in time this was written, it appeared that there were 3 school psychologists, one in each building. We've now gone to a district model where we have one person who will be servicing all 3 schools. We've turned that into a year-round position, so in the past the school psychs worked the 180 days with a little bit of an extended contract, but now it'll be a year-round position so that they're able to provide the training that's necessary to staff, also do reports over the summer, et cetera. So this is the recommendation for the updated job description.
They test over the summer?
They'll be able to do tests over the summer. They'll be able to do, trainings as needed, attend meetings, et cetera.
Any questions? Comments? I assume you need a motion to approve both of these?
I think,
Are
well,
these
yeah.
first reading, second reading, or this is more
I didn't talk
of a-
about the mental health clinician one, so basically what we're doing here is, if you remember, that position got created new a couple of years ago when we were unable to hire a school psychologist. And so we said, what we really need is somebody to provide mental health clinician services. So we created that, and we never created a job description. And so now we realized we have a gap, so here is the first job description for the person in that role. But as we tweaked and adjusted that, I think he got a better job description than if we built it for something that we envisioned and had to implement. So now this is what's been going on. The other piece, so the board understands this, we've met with the admin team, and our the SAU director team has been very heavily involved in developing kind of a student support framework. So we're actually resource rich when it comes to the people who can provide support to our students. But what we want to do is really tighten up the lanes, who's doing what, and how are the schools interacting. And so you'll be seeing a document, again, sometime in the next month or two, that will be implemented next fall. So how does a district level school psychologist interact with 3 schools? What are the parameters that we're putting in place? How does the mental health clinician not cross boundaries with the social worker? Where does the school counselor interplay? And so our admin team is engaged in that work, and you'll be getting a document relative to all of that. But job description would be important.
When a teacher does a special ed, if there's a referral to school psychologist, I would do the academic part and the school psychologist would do the other testing that I don't do. So we need to have at least 1 or 2 in the district.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the job descriptions for school psychologist and mental health clinician.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor of approving the job descriptions for school psychologist and mental health clinician, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes 500.
I'm the one and only Reed. They're not coming back, right? Okay.
Correct. I don't think they need I think it's policy that requires it, so these are it.
Perfect.
Just for those watching along, right, this was the approval of job descriptions. We're not going out and hiring new people,
Correct.
Correct.
right? The descriptions that go with the role that the district already has in place.
Correct.
Old business, I see, is blank. So moving into.
I just seek feedback from the board. Where do you want to see the ongoing conversation about all the community forum follow-up? I mean, I put it under new business because that's where I put it, but
It's new this week.
where do you want it and how do you want it worded?
It's gonna be new, right? We're gonna talk about it we talked about having it at every meeting, so
But it's.
maybe it's its own standalone
I
item.
was thinking under old business
Yeah.
actually, because if it's a recurring topic.
Yeah, it will now move to
Yeah.
Now we can.
Now it's
old
gonna-
business.
Yeah.
And you'll notice I went back and typed in the words grading and reporting to make it
Yeah.
clear. If that's,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna move it down to old business next.
Yeah,
That
you
makes
could just
sense.
call it a grading reporting update.
You got it.
School board comments.
All good.
Anybody? We already plugged Puffs, right? So that was earlier.
Tickets are available at the door.
Good remember.
First come, first
Friday at
served
7.
basis.
Saturday at 1.
Yeah,
The Friday
Friday at
Friday
7.
show is open bar.
Wait a minute.
Well, that's definitely, that's how we can make up our deficit.
Cash bar, you can make up a deficit.
School.
That's
Except that policy with no drinking on school property.
That's a whole new policy.
There is an adult butter beverage in the play, so.
Oh,
Butter
okay.
beverage.
Sell it.
Butterbeer.
We
Sell-
can't call it
just,
that.
you know,
Yeah.
rated G butter beverage in concessions.
Excellent. Any other school board comments? The only thing I would say is, I appreciate those of you who responded to provide ideas for streamlining our meetings. It seemed to work for this one. Obviously, there's gonna be other meetings where it doesn't work so well. We can go over those ideas. I think I sent mine in terms of moving the committee reports up. We did that. I think that's been implemented. Dr. Jetty emailed, the school leaders for principals to just remind them of what time frame we're asking for people for presentations, and they were already mostly complying and doing a great job with it, but I think it was just a little reminder. So, my goal is to try to make these as efficient as possible. We're at 7:45, which sounds good for tonight. We'll see if we can
Can
keep it
I
going.
ask, I think it went back and forth in one of the million emails I read. Are we going to put the community, not the committees we're on, are we gonna put should I forward those emails to Jan Sullivan? Or am I just gonna say, Andrew sent an update? Do you know what I mean?
That's kind of why I suggested we have just a template on, a link for committees. So that, like Andrew's email was a great synopsis of the meeting.
Yep.
Which, rather than read through the minutes and the agenda, which are posted on the website, I think it just gives the board member, it would be like the board member's report
Yeah.
in writing for us to review ahead of time.
And you want that in the minutes, right? So if
I think it would go.
if it's
that
on
go
the
in
summary from Liz to Jan, it will be captured there too, so.
Right,
I have the
Instead of me
summary.
sending emails, if there's just a way for me to attach it
right, that's
Into
kind of
the
what I
on a
was
running,
thinking.
on a running basis to each of our agendas.
I wonder if we create a template that has each committee and then we all each
Fill
go
in
in and fill
like
out,
this.
again, I'm thinking 2 sentences,
Yeah.
maybe, obviously more, okay, Andrew, 3 sentences for you, but, trying to keep it short, bullet point, to the point.
So if I may,
Yep.
if you go back up to item where committee reports are.
Yep.
So there's a link to the website that has all the official minutes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep,
But you could just liven up the link of the committee report
Right.
Perfect.
right,
right
That's
there.
what I was thinking.
Right, so
Yeah.
if you liven it up in that spot, it's available to the public, it's available to,
I think that
Yep.
is a great idea.
Thanks.
so a suggestion, email is gonna be harder to link. If you
Okay.
just create a quick Google Doc that says,
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting.
budget committee summary from Andrew.
Yep.
And you just do it as a running thing. You just, I would put the most
So-
recent at the top and
Yeah.
just link it there, one link, so that you're not changing links every time you do it. You just
Oh,
link
I
it.
see.
Yeah.
So liven up the.
So
link
budget
for
committee would be
committee.
Each committee's
linked
of
in
its own.
blue
I
and
see
we
what you're
click
saying,
on
yeah.
it and go through,
And
but
people can go back and look at the history of the,
Do we have editing access to the agenda? Because we would need that to liven those links, right?
Do you?
So this particular, I've had it in the past, this particular agenda, I don't, it's sent as a PDF, so.
Why did I do that? Because I did it and Barbara didn't, so I don't really know what she normally does, but I sent the email and I just said, I'll just send it as a PDF. But yes, I'll make sure that you have editing access to that
Okay.
and can make that link in there.
And if there wasn't a meeting, then you don't need to fill anything.
I mean, Barbara was out, and so I took on a little bit more with this, and I didn't do it exactly the same way, but we can fix that.
Sounds good to me.
any other school board comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the manifest, which has not made its way around, but everyone did have a chance to see the emails earlier today. Is that, there's nothing new in this that was different?
Nothing
from-
new in that one, nope.
Emails earlier today.
Not today, earlier, the
last week.
manifest, the last week emails that Ann
Yes.
sent us a thorough
Yep.
manifest. Appreciate you guys answering those questions as we have
Yes,
them.
thank you.
While we accumulate signatures, I will move into community input to see, is there anyone here who would like to? Yeah, and
And
then,
before 8:00.
I know, it is before 8:00, but I figure we're multitasking here while
We
we,
moved a lot to
while
the
we
consent
sign.
agenda, and I
Yeah.
think that really helped a lot.
yeah, I agree.
Afternoon. Evening, everyone. Jim Norton, Woodhawk Way. First of all, Puffs is gonna be fantastic. So just get your kids, we gotta fill those seats, so. Just quickly, now that Mrs. Milligan has given her resignation, is it the board's intent to keep 4 full-time music directors? I didn't see the job on the website, that's why I'm here. A lot of us worked hard to keep that position in the budget, and we were talking to anybody who would listen to us to vote yes on one, so that we got that passed, so that we were assured that we wouldn't lose any teachers, especially performing arts. And if that went down to 3, it would just be pretty disappointing. I know you don't have to respond, but I hope you folks can talk amongst yourself about it tonight and maybe come up with the expectation for what next year is going to look like for performing arts. But you've heard my spiel many a times, but it's very important for these kids, and the program is finally taking off again. You saw it in Oz. You see it in Puffs on Saturday. These kids are building sets, 8 hours, 9 hours there, and they are excited to do this. So to pull the rug out from under them, to stop the momentum of the music group, it would be sad. So thank you very much.
Jim,
Appreciate
just because you took the time to come out tonight, and I just want you to know that in non-public, I will be presenting a collaborative plan that the administrators and the music teachers have developed. And I'll be presenting that to the board for feedback, and we'll have information out as quickly as we can. But we wanted to bring that forward and make sure that we're all on the same page, so.
I appreciate that, thank you. And thanks for all you guys do, appreciate it.
Thank you. Manifest now has 3 signatures, so that is good to go. Seeing no other community input, I'm gonna close that, and we are prepared to move into non-public session. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this long paragraph. Non-public session is for the A, dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, request that that meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person as a public employee, and C, matters which, if discussed in public, would adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the body, agency itself, unless such persons requests an open meeting. So is there, I think we need a motion to go into non-public. Is there a motion?
Yeah, so made.
Second?
Second. All those in favor of going into non-public?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. And then Andrew abstains. So we will go ahead and go into non-public. Our next meeting is Wednesday, April 19th. We look forward to hopefully having you tune in. Please come provide community input, comments. We welcome that. And thanks, everyone. Have a good night.